Picture a small city on the edge of one of the most beautiful lakes in the world. Cobbled streets running down to the water, villas carved into the hillside, the kind of place where the whole world seems to come on holiday. That city is Como, in northern Italy. And sitting right there on the waterfront, tucked between the lake and the Alps, is a football club so thoroughly broken by the time the 2010s rolled around that it was competing in the fifth tier of Italian football, bankrupt twice over. That club is Como 1907, and right now they are fourth in Serie A, pushing for European football, with the best defensive record in Italy and a head coach who was still playing professional football less than 3 years ago. Back-to-back relegations in the early 2000s would cause financial chaos at Como, and by 2004 the club were declared bankrupt and excluded from Italian professional football entirely, dropped straight into Serie A, regional, non-professional. The beginning of the end came in the 2002-2003 season, when Como's return to Serie A lasted a single year. They won just 4 times all season and finished on 24 points. 2 more relegations followed after that. The former chairman had allegedly siphoned off player contracts and assets to his new club Genoa on his way out the door. The company was closed down, a new entity had to be formed just so football could still be played in the city at all. They clawed their way back up through the amateur leagues over the next decade, reached Serie B in 2015, then went bankrupt again in 2016. At the 4th auction, Akosua Puni Essien, wife of former Ghanaian international Michael Essien, purchased the club for €237,000, but she was forced to sell due to renewed liquidity problems. Then a private jet landed from London, and everything changed. The Italian press talked about the arrival of the English at Como, but the ones who were actually taking control of the club came from much further away than that, from Indonesia. Robert Budi Hartono and Michael Bambang Hartono are the brothers behind Jarum, an Indonesian conglomerate built on tobacco, banking, real estate, and technology. They sit among the top 80 richest people on Earth, with fortunes of $26.5 and $25.5 billion respectively. And in 2019, they bought a bankrupt Italian football club playing in front of nobody in the 4th division for $220,000. Almost nobody noticed. Even major media outlets overlooked it entirely. What the Hartonos wanted to build wasn't a vanity project. Their vision, voiced early on by their representative Michael Gandler, was to become a kind of digital Ajax, using their media background to grow the club commercially, developing a world-class youth academy to rival the likes of Inter and Atalanta, building something over time rather than buying instant success overnight. They had a brilliant start too. Como won the Serie D title with an all-time points record, and then won Serie C 2 years later to reach Serie B. Then in August 2022, former Arsenal, Barcelona, and Chelsea player Cesc Fàbregas arrived as a minority shareholder, joining the club as a player. Thierry Henry followed him in as a shareholder later that same month. That is when the world started paying attention. Fabregas spent 1 season playing for the club before retiring in 2023, stepping straight into the coaching staff. He had spent his career playing under Arsène Wenger, Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, Vicente del Bosque, and Antonio Conte, a who's who of football intelligence, and now he was going to apply everything he had absorbed to a team in the Italian 2nd division. In November 2023, Como sacked head coach Moreno Longo and appointed Fabregas as caretaker manager, a man who did not yet hold the UEFA Pro coaching license. No badges, no previous management experience, just thrown straight in. Como rose from 7th to 3rd in Serie B under him before his temporary exemption expired, at which point Welshman Ocean Roberts was appointed head coach, with Fabregas demoted to his assistant. The two of them rode out the rest of the season together, and it delivered exactly what the club needed. They finished 2nd in Serie B, securing promotion back to Serie A for the first time in 21 years, confirmed on the final match day against Cosenza. On the 19th of July 2024, days after being admitted to the UEFA Pro coaching course in Coverciano, Fabregas was formally appointed as head coach of Como on a 4-year contract. The transfer window that followed was unlike anything the club had ever seen. Rafael Varane, World Cup winner and former Real Madrid captain, Pepe Reina, goalkeeper with over 700 career appearances, Andrea Bellotti, former Italy striker, statement after statement, arriving at a club that had been in non-league football 5 years ago. The first game of the season was away at Juventus in Turin. They lost 3-0. Fine, expected. But then match day 5 came around and Fabregas led Como to a 3-2 win away at Atalanta, the reigning Europa League winners, with 3 goals in 12 minutes of the second half. What followed was a run of 6 consecutive Serie A wins from a team that most people had assumed would be fighting relegation all season. The football they played drew comparisons to Guardiola's positional game, fluid and possession-based, with Fabregas adding his own wrinkles, overloading central channels, pressing triggers in the middle third, a system that confused teams who expected a newly promoted side to sit deep and hang on. They finished the season in 10th place, the first time Como had ever managed to stay in Serie A following a return to the top flight. Not just survival, a top half finish. Then they went and spent over $100 million in the next 2 transfer windows. Martín Baturina came from Dinamo Zagreb, Jesus Rodriguez from Real Betis, Nicolás Koum from Celtic, and Álvaro Morata arrived on loan from AC Milan. The ambition was no longer about staying up. In January 2026, Como beat Torino 6-0, their biggest ever Serie A win. They reached the semifinals of the Coppa Italia, the best run of the club's history, and Fabregas guided them to a 2-0 win over Juventus in Turin, their first victory over the club since 1952. And as things stand after 31 games of the 2025-26 season, Como sit 4th in Serie A with 58 points, above Juventus and Atalanta, with only Inter, Napoli, and AC Milan ahead of them. European football, something this club has never experienced in their entire history, is right there. When Fabregas was asked recently whether bigger clubs were circling, whether he could see himself leaving, his answer was straightforward. Will I stay at Como? I love this place. The project is very important. I had offers last year, but I chose to stay because I feel very comfortable with what I can build here. He's 38 years old, was retired as a player less than 3 years ago, and won Italy's Enzo Berzat Award as the country's best coach last season. Whatever comes next for this club, it is clear he is not done building. There are still financial questions to answer. Reports from 2025 showed a 6th consecutive annual loss since the Hartonos took over, with costs running at over 160 million euros against revenue of around 55 million. That gap will need to close, especially if UEFA financial regulations come into play following a European qualification. But none of that changes what Como 1907 are right now. A club that went bankrupt twice, dropped to the 5th tier, got sold at auction for the price of a used car, and are now 4th in Italy, playing the most exciting football in the country with a rookie manager who was lining up in midfield a couple of years ago, and an ownership group that appears completely unbothered by the scale of what they're building. The lake is beautiful, the football is better, and it feels like this story is only just getting started. If you enjoyed that, hit subscribe and leave a like on the video.